title of it is, Can I Fix It? Now, the backdrop of this, there's a couple of things that led me to this. First of all, whenever I hear people go on moaning about politics and moaning about the state of the world and things that are happening, I sometimes will stop them and I'll say, listen, especially to non-believers, can man fix this? And there's always that knowing little thought and little shrug, meaning no. In their hearts, they know man can't fix this, okay? So that's one of the things. Now, can I fix it? In my youth, when I was at uni, I used to do my own work on my car because I didn't have the money to pay a mechanic. I had to do my own work. I did my own tune-ups. I rebuilt my engine. I changed the brake drums. I changed the wheel bearings. I did everything on that car because I didn't have the money to do anything else. So anyway, I'd like to think of myself as not an expert, but I know some stuff. I'm not like a mechanic, but I'm aware of stuff. But then, about 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, my tire was low because I got these sensors on this car. New cars, huh? A bunch of rubbish. Anyway, the sensor says you got a low tire, driver's side rear. So I go to the machine like you do, and I put the nozzle on it, and I'm going to fill it with air, right? And suddenly the tire goes flat as a pancake. Done. And I went, oh no! So what happened is I'm putting air in the tire. Somehow it broke the sensor and broke the valve. And I didn't do anything weird. I simply put it over the nozzle and pumped it. You know what I mean? It's not rocket science. I've done it how many times? Hundreds. Every time I needed air, put air. That's it. So then, at the end of the day, it cost me about 150 pounds to fix that stupid sensor. And that's when I said, okay, hands off of this machine. I can't fix this machine. This is beyond me. Now, the question that I have is, how much time have I wasted trying to do things or worrying about them when they're outside of my purview?
And money.
Yeah. Okay, what?
The money that we spent on getting that thing fixed
Oh.
was ridiculous.
Yeah. So the thing is there are things that only God can do, right? And there are things that God won't do. Why won't God do certain things? Because he expects us to do it. Okay? But there are things that only God can do, but sometimes we kind of interfere. So what we need to do with this, I'm going to go into Proverbs 3 verses 5 and 6. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, not part of it, all of it, and do not lean on your own understanding. Leaning is an interesting thing because if you lean up against a wall and the wall collapses, so do you. Okay, so that leaning is an interesting action. And then he says, in all your ways acknowledge him. He will make your path straight. Acknowledge him means to declare his rightful place in our lives. His rightful place is he is our creator God who loves us completely. And he says he will make our path straight. I have tried for 40 years to make my path straight, and I have failed miserably. I can't make my path straight, but God does make them straight. And sometimes I'll be going along and I'll see that my path has been straightened where it wasn't straight before. And I've had to look back and say, well, what did I do about it? Well, nothing. The only thing that I did was I desired to have it go straight. I wanted to, but I found myself in a complete incapacity to make it so. And then God does what he does best, okay? So, the 4 words: trust, don't lean, acknowledge, straight paths. And if you don't do that, what do you get? You get a horrible trajectory called zigzag. Okay, Judy, if you could do Matthew 15, verses 12 to 14, please.
Then the disciples came to him and asked, do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this? And he replied, every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be pulled up by the roots. Leave them. They are blind guides. If a blind guide leads the blind, both will fall into a pit.
Okay, don't you just feel sorry for these widow Pharisees? Oh, he hurting my feelings. Oh, no. Oh, pitiful, pitiful, pitiful. So first of all, we tend to want to avoid conflict. but we cannot. Conflict is inevitable, and even conflict is where we learn the most in our lives. But that's exactly what we will run away from as much as we can. Not only you, I will too. I don't want to fight with people. I don't want to stand my ground. I don't want conflict to be a part of my life. But it is inevitable because there are times when flesh is going to meet spirit. When flesh meets spirit, you cannot avoid a conflict. Even if you are as peacemaking as possible, still there is a conflict, okay? But I have a good news for us tonight. There is a direction that we can go when flesh does meet the spirit that's really going to help us in our lives. So I'll develop it now. If God hasn't planted something, he says it'll be pulled up by the roots. Now, what happens to a plant pulled up by the roots? It dries up and dies, okay? Now, following someone who doesn't see the light cannot lead you to the light, huh? They don't see the light, but they're telling you they want to take you to the light, but they don't even see it. So how are they going to get you anywhere? Well, the proof of the matter is they can't. Now, what does Jesus say about them? He says, leave them alone. Do not engage. Do not engage with them. And you'll notice that Jesus only ever engaged with them when he was forced, when he had no choice whatsoever. But otherwise, he always just let them alone. Okay? They didn't leave him alone, was where the problem was. Now, let's go for Acts 15, verses 36 to 41. We'll just take it in tranches, so we'll go 36 and 37 first.
After some time, Paul said to Barnabas, let's go back and visit each city where we previously preached the word of the Lord to see how the new believers are doing. Barnabas agreed and wanted to take along John Mark.
Okay, so Paul wants to take Barnabas and see how the churches were faring where they went on their first missionary journey. Now, follow-up is absolutely mandatory when you're doing something. Whenever I have preached the word to someone and I see that their hearts are touched, I always follow it up. I always call them back, how you doing? Would you like to talk some more? How about we have a cup of coffee or something like that? I'll always do that and try to solder a more permanent relationship if I can. Because once we see that a heart is softened, then our job is to disciple them. Is just, engage them, start talking with them, get involved in their lives and that. So Paul wants to take Barnabas and he wants to do some follow-up. They got to the point where they were choosing team members. Now, this is a very important point. Notice when Jesus sent the 70 out, okay? He sent them out how? 2 by 2. Lone Ranger Christianity is not biblical, is not in the Bible. You always have someone with you. The story that I got from Angus Buchan from Africa, from South Africa, I listen to him sometimes. He says there was a man who said he was going to Ethiopia to minister in a church, and the question was, who are you taking with you? He said, well, I'm not taking anybody because it's just a short one and it's a simple one. And Angus said, no, take someone with you. Never go alone. And that is absolutely true. Never go alone. Now, they're choosing team members. It's not Paul going off on a jolly or Barnabas going off on a jolly. They're taking a team with them, okay? Now, missions are never solo endeavors, okay? They're always some form of teamwork. See, if I have someone with me, I have someone to bounce off of how things are going. And also, he watches my back, I watch his, etc. It's really, really important. Now, let's go verse 38, please.
But Paul disagreed strongly, since John Mark had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not continued with them in their work.
Now, notice that both of them had valid points. That's the way that you will find most arguments happen. There is some validity in both points of view. Now, Paul says, well, I don't want to take Mark because on the first missionary journey, our lives were in danger and we were working hard and this guy ran off. He left us exposed. But then Barnabas says, no, I want to take him with me. So why did Barnabas want to take him with him? I have a feeling it has to do with restoration. It has to do with a change of heart or something. I have to think that, because if he did not have a change of heart, I don't think Barnabas would have wanted him with him, because Barnabas was a mature Christian. Okay, so the contention became so strong that both of them were camped in their positions and were immovable, and there was no way forward. Paul was saying adamantly, no, not having him. Barnabas is saying adamantly, he is. So what happened with it? Let's see in 39 and 40.
Their disagreement was so sharp that they separated. Barnabas took John Mark with him and sailed for Cyprus. Paul chose Silas, and as he left, the believers entrusted them to the Lord's gracious care.
One more verse, last verse, please.
Then he travelled throughout Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches there.
Okay, now it's an interesting thing. Not only were Barnabas and Paul at 180 degrees loggerheads with regards to the contention, they also, you'll notice that which one was it? I think, Barnabas goes to Cyprus, which is due west. Where does Paul and Silas go? They go to Syria, due east. So we have a 180 degree split ideologically and geographically even. They had a real split there. However, it would have been absolutely useless for Paul to give ground and be traveling with Mark when he had to be in his bonnet against the guy because of his prior actions. It would have been a point of contention for Barnabas to have left him behind when he really felt in his heart that he needed to have him with him. Okay,
Yeah.
so you can see where this goes. They were just opposed by 180 degrees. Now, notice also in verse 40 that Silas and Paul apparently were confirmed by the believing church, whereas Barnabas and Mark were not. Now, do we make something of that? I'm not completely sure. I know that Paul didn't write this account. This was written by Theophilus, okay? So it wasn't like Paul was giving, it wasn't like when Moses says in Numbers, Moses was a humble man, the most humble man who ever lived on the face of the earth. Then we ask ourselves the question, well, who wrote the book of Numbers? Well, Moses did. So we're not talking about a situation like that. Although I don't want to doubt Moses here. That's not right either. But you see, he didn't have a vested interest in making that point. So the question is, do we make a big deal out of that or not? I personally am convinced that the church felt that Paul was right about that, because it is mentioned that they were committed by the brethren. In other words, committed by the brethren means they were sent out, prayed over, prophesied over, and boom, go, you see. Whereas Barnabas and Saul and Mark, it doesn't say that happened, okay? Now, another thing we have to see, Paul, later on in his epistles, I believe it to be Timothy, but don't quote me on that, where he says, bring along Mark with you because he's useful to me for the ministry. So, and we're talking just before Paul's execution in Rome. So we're talking many years later, meaning that he probably did have a reconciliation with Mark. So that tells me that he didn't just have a bee in his bonnet against him. There was something that he didn't want. He didn't want Mark involved in this for this time. So one of the things that we can see here is separation is sometimes a very good thing. It serves no purpose if you stay together if there is dissension and contention in the camp. Yes.
It's not just that. Yes, there can be dissension in the camp. But it is also possible, and this is something that nobody ever talks about. John Mark may not have been spiritually ready for the journey that Paul was embarking on.
Could be.
And he maybe needed a little bit more growing up to do before he was ready to take on some of the challenges that Paul was going to have to face. And if you look at the story of Paul, He had some fairly cheeky
he
challenges.
had some challenges. Also, I believe, don't quote me on this either, but I do believe that the Catholic Church has writings from Barnabas. But you have to check that out. I believe. See, what I'm trying to say is Barnabas was not just he was a pillar of the early church.
It doesn't sound like, it sounds like they still gave each other their blessing. Like Paul didn't say to him, Barnabas, don't go there if you're going with him. They agreed to separate,
yeah.
but not being angry with each other. Or
I like that point. Yeah. I like that.
They still went and did what they was going to do.
Yeah, I would say that it doesn't invalidate Barnabas and Mark's journey, because the Bible doesn't say that they were committed to the Lord by the brethren. Okay, so I want
Paul still was happy for them to go and see how the churches were and speak to them and maybe give them more advice or rules or whatever.
Sure.
So he didn't say no, you shouldn't go at all.
Yeah. So I like that. That's a positive outlook on it. That's an optimistic outlook. Look, I'm not sure about that, and that's one of those things that we can extrapolate on and say, just be at peace within ourselves about it. You see. So now some of the things: can you fix it? And if you can't, what do you do? There are times when separation is a very positive thing, and it depends on how you separate. I have had to separate myself from churches before. I've had to say, no, can't walk with what you're doing. God bless you. Go your way, but not with me. I've had to do that sometimes. So have you. It's painful, very painful. I really don't like it, but it is something that we have to do, because otherwise we're going to be in disunity, and nothing can ever be solved with disunity. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't kick around various ideas and we have a good idea pool where we're choosing from things and options and things. That's not that. I'm talking about, this is a great example of a contention that could not be solved with John Mark going with the second missionary journey. It couldn't be solved. So separation was the best thing to do. And that way, everybody still got ministered to, in the churches that had been planted, all right? Now, in a contention also, it's never only the two people who are involved in it. There are observers. There are people on the periphery. There are people on the sphere around us. There's our loved ones. There's our friends. There's the people we fellowship with. There's even onlookers from the non-believing community that it's good to take into account. Look, they're watching us, how we solve our contentions. Sometimes I have to say that the Christian church doesn't look very good when it comes to solving their contentious issues. Okay, but we have to be aware of the fact that we are always being watched. Always. And the non-believing world, even if they've never met us, they know there's something different about us. They know we're Christians. They know it. Okay, it's spirit to spirit. Now, another thing is that leave things to God to sort out, or leave things to someone that God has anointed to sort it out. I wasn't anointed to fix my tire and put that sensor right. I had to get even the people, the mechanics to deal with it. I couldn't do it. So what I had to do is go to the people who could. And I can't fix everything myself. But the point I'm trying to make is sometimes a separation is a good thing. But we always look at separation as a defeat, don't we? But I don't think it's necessarily a defeat. I think it's sensible. If you can't go forward in unity, you shouldn't go forward together. You have to go forward with people who are of like mind with yourself. Remember the time when I preached on the the Tower of Babel, that what did God do? He confused their speech, and what happened with the confused speech was that they no longer had the unity necessary to carry out the project. So what happened? They were scattered. They had to be scattered because they could no longer be in accord with one another. All right. So to just pack this up, I'd say we just have to realize that separation can be a good thing when used well. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
How's that?